Chapter 10, in which a moment of darkness leads to an illumination. The two-deck library, with its scent of polished wood and old paper, was a sanctuary. Carrie inhaled deeply as she entered, the tensions of the morning. That question, his face when she'd asked it, receding with each step she took deeper into the hushed space. Around her, leather-bound volumes waited patiently on gleaming shelves, offering refuge from people and their messy emotions. The room was designed for hushed conversations and quiet contemplation, with secluded alcoves tucked between tall shelves and plush chairs positioned beneath brass reading lamps. A glass display case near the entrance showcased rare editions behind discreet security glass. A small sign proclaimed it the finest floating collection in the world, a claim both impressive and oddly specific. Carrie moved between the shelves, reading titles at random, her camera remaining in its bag for once. Some things were better experienced than documented. The faint scent of binding glue and old paper intensified as she rounded a shelf of maritime histories. And there he was. Crispin Shrike sat curled in a wing-backed chair in a secluded alcove, looking nothing like the stiff academic from the morning session. His long legs were tucked beneath him, his glasses perched low on his nose, and in his hands was a small, time-worn book that commanded his complete attention. In this unguarded moment, his face held none of the professorial superiority. His world had shrunk to the small rectangle of time-worn pages in his hands, and nothing else existed. A stern-looking librarian hovered nearby, her watchful eyes flicking between Crispin and the book he held with the vigilance of a museum guard monitoring a particularly suspicious visitor. Carrie hesitated, prepared to retreat, but some small sound, a shifted weight perhaps, or a caught breath, gave her away. Crispin looked up suddenly, blinking as if emerging from deep water. Their eyes met across the quiet space. The defensiveness she expected never appeared. Instead, a slight flush coloured his cheeks.
"The photographer with the uncomfortable questions,"
he said, his voice low enough not to disturb the library's peace.
"Have you come to finish me off completely, or are you just browsing?"
"Just browsing," Carrie replied honestly. "I didn't plan on running into you at all."
"Fair enough."
He hesitated, then added,
"Since you've already seen the messy contents of my professional soul, I'd like to explain my subsequent thoughts on the arrangement. Or derangement, perhaps."
He gestured to the empty chair beside him. She needed to know if this man, the one lost in a book, was the same one she'd cornered that morning. The contrast pulled her forward. The pompous academic versus this absorbed reader. She crossed to the alcove. And
"And I find myself in the unusual position of not having a proper academic response prepared."
He closed the old book carefully, keeping his place with one long finger.
"Which is, frankly, rather alarming for someone who's built a career on having the right answer for everything."
"So you don't have an answer?"
"Oh, I have an improper answer. Not one I'm particularly proud of."
He ran a hand through his already dishevelled hair.
"You're right about the ghosts. They would be disappointed. I catalogue passionate lives from the safety of an archive. There's no risk, no heart, just footnotes."
He gestured vaguely at himself.
"I've spent decades writing about people who lived, truly lived, while I've done nothing braver than order fish at a restaurant with questionable reviews."
Carrie blinked. The defensiveness she'd expected was gone, replaced by a raw self-assessment that was far more disarming than any scholarly rebuttal. "So, what are you reading?" she asked, nodding at the book in his hands. His face brightened, the defensive tightness in his shoulders visibly easing as he held up the book.
"Ah, this is rather special."
He showed it to her with the careful reverence of someone handling a newborn. It was small, bound in faded green leather, that had darkened at the edges with age and handling.
"A first edition Pride and Prejudice, 3 volumes, 1813, part of the ship's special collection."
The librarian cleared her throat pointedly from her station. and Crispin lowered his voice.
Had to practically sign away my firstborn to handle it. Fingerprinting may have been involved.
May I? Carrie asked, drawn by the obvious treasure he held. Crispin glanced at the librarian, who gave an almost imperceptible nod.
Apparently, you've been deemed worthy.
He said with a slight smile, and handed the book to her. His fingers lingered on the cover an extra moment, reluctant to part with it. The movement was so gentle, so deliberate, that she found herself handling it with twice the care she might have otherwise. The book was surprisingly heavy for its size, the leather cool and smooth against her fingers. She opened it gently, mindful of the binding, and was greeted by the faint, intoxicating scent that only centuries-old paper can produce.
It's not just the words, you know.
He said, watching her examine it.
Though heaven knows the words are magnificent enough, it's the object itself. Someone bound those pages. Someone set that type. Someone in 1813 walked into a bookshop and purchased this very copy, perhaps read it by candlelight.
His eyes, alight behind his glasses, held a youthful fervour she hadn't seen before, even during his lecture. This wasn't the careful academic. This was the boy who had fallen in love with history in the first place. "I've always wondered," she said, carefully turning a page, "if Jane would be pleased with how we've canonised her, made her work required reading in schools, or would she laugh at us all for taking her drawing-room comedies so seriously?"
Both, I imagine.
He replied with surprising quickness.
She'd be gratified and mortified in equal measure. Mostly, she'd be astonished that we're still reading her at all. Most authors of her era have been forgotten entirely. She's the ultimate teacher, really. Forget the rest. Jane Austen is all you need.
But what have you learned from her? Snarky jabs in impeccable language? A pity Lucy isn't here. You two could trade barbs and I'd watch the show. As Carrie handed the book back to him, their conversation was interrupted by the harsh buzz of the ship's electricity cutting out. The lights went out with a sudden thud, plunging the library into darkness. A moment later, emergency lighting kicked in, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. A few passengers gasped. A glass broke somewhere nearby. The librarian's voice cut through the darkness.
Please remain calm. The emergency lighting is fully functional.
A beat later, her tone sharpened.
Dr. Shrike, is the special collection secure?
In the confusion of the moment, Crispin fumbled and dropped the precious book.
The book, it slipped, oh God, where?
His voice was small and tight with panic. The professorial composure shattered. He was on his feet, peering at the floor, his hands patting the space around his chair with increasing desperation.
I say, could you possibly help?
He asked, turning to Carrie.
My eyes are useless in this light.
The plea stripped away the last of his professorial armour. In that moment, he wasn't Dr. Crispin Shrike, renowned historian. He was simply a man terrified of damaging something precious. "Of course," Carrie replied, sliding from her chair to the floor. It created a moment of slightly farcical intimacy, as they were both on their hands and knees, whispering and patting the plush carpet around the armchair in the dim orange glow.
If I've lost a first edition Jane Austen,
He muttered.
I'll have to throw myself overboard. It would be the only honourable option.
"Pretty sure bibliocide is a worse crime than book loss," Carrie replied, and was rewarded with a strangled laugh.
Not if you're a historian. We have a code. Lose a primary source, lose your life. It's very medieval, but terribly effective for maintaining scholarly standards.
Dr. Shrike,
The librarian's voice was closer now.
is everything all right over there?
Perfectly fine.
He called back, his voice an octave higher than normal.
Just a small temporary misplacement. Nothing to worry about at all. She's going to banish me from every library in the Commonwealth.
He whispered to Carrie.
I'll be reduced to reading pamphlets in waiting rooms.
Her fingers brushed against something, rough, deckle-edged paper and the distinctive texture of aged leather binding. The book had slid under the chair's skirt. hidden in the deepest shadow. "Got it," she said, delighted in her whisper. She carefully extracted the volume and held it out to him. As he reached for it, his hand covered hers, a moment of warm, firm contact over the cover of Jane Austen's novel. A jolt went through her, sharp and unexpected as a static shock, an electric current that had nothing to do with the ship's faulty wiring. His fingers were surprisingly calloused for an academic, strong and sure against hers. At that exact moment, the main lights flickered back on, flooding the alcove in a sudden, unforgiving glare. They were caught kneeling on the floor, hands clasped over the book, looking directly at each other. His eyes, she noticed, weren't simply grey as she'd first thought, but a complex mix of blue and green and grey, like the ocean on an overcast day. Crispin scrambled to his feet, clutching the book like a holy relic.
Thank God.
He breathed, then launched into a torrent of words.
I'd have had to throw myself overboard, or at least hide in my cabin until we reached Southampton. My academic reputation would never have recovered.
The relief came out in a rush, his accent more pronounced with emotion, his usual measured cadence replaced by something more natural, more human. He stopped abruptly and ran a hand through his hair, a faint blush returning to his cheeks.
Sorry, I'm rambling.
He offered her a hand up from the floor. Carrie laughed, a genuine warm sound that surprised her as much as it seemed to please him. "I think the book would have survived," she said, accepting his hand. "It's made it through 200 years already."
Yes, well, perspective.
He still hadn't released her hand.
Thank you, nonetheless, for the rescue and for earlier. The question, though I'm still not entirely sure whether to curse you or thank you for that one.
"Let me know when you decide," she replied, gently withdrawing her hand. The library was returning to normal around them. A staff member was apologising for the brief power disruption, promising it was nothing to be concerned about. Other passengers were returning to their books and conversations. But something had changed in their small alcove. The awkwardness had dissolved into a shared moment of something. Not quite friendship, not quite understanding, but a beginning. Crispin looked at her, his earlier gratitude now layered with a clear, undisguised admiration.
I should return this to its rightful guardian before I'm blacklisted from libraries worldwide,
he said, nodding toward the librarian who was watching them with narrowed eyes.
But thank you. Truly.
Any time. Saving priceless literature from careless academics is a specialty of mine. His laugh was warm and genuine.
Is that right? Well, I'll be sure to have more literary emergencies in your vicinity.
He hesitated, then added, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness.
I'm speaking this evening, actually. The debate with Maeve Penhaligon on historical fiction. Will you be there?
The question held more weight than its casual delivery suggested. "I might be," Carrie replied, surprised by how much she wanted to see what this new, slightly dishevelled version of Crispin Shrike would say in a public debate.
Good. That's good.
He nodded, as if confirming something to himself.
I think it might be rather different than people expect.
On her way to the door, she glanced at the schedule for the evening's events. "Bringing history to life," it read. She smiled. After seeing the man behind the academic mask, she had a feeling it was about to get very interesting indeed.